وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ولا شبيه ولا مثيل له ولا ضد ولا ند ولا جسد ولا صورة ولا أعضاء له. كان الله ولا مكان، فهو الآن على ما عليه كان. فلا تضربوا لله الأمثال، ولله المثل الأعلى. تنزه ربي عن الجلوس والقعود، وعن الحركة والسكون، وعن الاتصال والانفصال. لا يحل فيه شيء ولا ينحل منه شيء ولا يحل هو في شيء، لأنه ليس كمثله شيء. مهما تصورت بذلك فالله لا يشبه ذلك. ومن وصف الله بمعنى من معاني البشر فقد كفر. وأشهد أن سيدنا وعظيمنا وقائدنا وقرة أعيننا محمدا عبد الله ورسوله ونبيه وصفيه وحبيبه وخليله، أرسله الله هدى ورحمة للعالمين، هاديا ومبشرا ونذيرا، وداعيا إلى الله بإذنه سراجا وهاجا وقمرا منيرا. اللهم صل وسلم وأعظم وأنعم وأكرم على هذا النبي الكريم سيدنا محمد خاتم النبيين، كلما ذكره الذاكرون وغفل عن ذكره الغافلون. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا حبيب الله. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا عظيم الجاه. I praise Allah, I glorify Him, and I thank Him for all the blessings that He gives without Him being obligated to give anything. And I ask Allah to raise the rank of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and to protect his Muslim nation. I testify that no one deserves to be worshipped except Allah, the one without a partner, the one without an equal, the one without a similar, the one who is unlike anything in the universe, and nothing in the universe is like him. He has no father, no mother, no sister, no brother, no son, and no daughter. He exists without time and place because he is the creator of time and place. He does not reside above the throne, and he is not attributed with fatigue like the Jews say. Our Lord is glorified beyond any imperfection that the non-Muslims attribute to him. Whatever you imagine in your mind, Allah Ta'ala does not resemble that. And whoever attributes and attributed the creations to Allah is outside of Islam. And I testify that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the son of Abdullah, the son of Abdul Muttalib, the son of Hashim, the son of Abdul Manaf, from the tribe of Quraysh, is the best creation of Allah and his final prophet and messenger sent to all humans and jinn, and he is truthful about everything he conveyed of the revelation. Thereafter, remind ourselves to have the sincere intention for the sake of Allah in attending this session of Islamic knowledge, because having the sincere intention is a requirement to get the reward. So the Muslim, whenever he does a good deed, he has to have the sincere intention for the sake of Allah to get reward for that good deed. The reward is defined as the compensation that the Muslim receives in the hereafter for the good deeds that he did in this life among what makes him happy. An example of the reward that is guaranteed to the righteous Muslim in the grave is that his grave is expanded approximately 105 feet by 105 feet, and his grave is illuminated with a light similar to the light of the full moon, and the fragrance of paradise would be present in the grave. The sincere intention means for the Muslim to do the good deed, seeking the acceptance of Allah only, and not the praise of the people. So, Alhamdulillah, once again, we are grateful and thankful to Allah. We glorify Allah for guiding us to Al-Islam, and for having mercy on us and making our hearts open and pleased with the truth that no one deserves to be worshipped except the Creator, and that Muhammad is his messenger, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And so, as Muslims, our authority is the prophets. All the prophets, they have the authority over the people, and they're the ones that have to be obeyed, and they're the ones that have to be followed, and you can never go against them. You can never go against the prophets. So alhamdulillah that Allah Ta'ala made us among the people who are not against the prophets. And the people who are against the prophets, these people, they are the wicked people, the bad people, the evil people. They're the ones who are against the prophets. And so we are the nation of the last and best prophet that was ever sent to the world, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So we base our mindsets, our perspectives on that we are loyal followers and people that love the prophets, and of course the final prophet, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So we are grateful to Allah for that, and we are grateful to Allah that He has guided us to acquire the obligatory knowledge, because the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam gave many glad tidings to the seeker of Islamic knowledge. So if you find in your heart the inclination and the desire and the motivation and the want and the thirst for the Islamic knowledge, then this is a good sign for you. Because the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, "May yuridillahu bihi khayra yufaqihu fid din," which means the one who Allah willed goodness for makes him knowledgeable in al-Islam. So to be knowledgeable in the Islamic sciences, this is a good sign for that person, for that Muslim, that Allah Ta'ala willed goodness for him. And there's also another hadith that says the one who seeks a path to the knowledge, Allah Ta'ala facilitates his path to paradise. And the scholars have said the knowledge of Ahlus Sunnah is the key to paradise. So whoever wants to go to paradise, whoever wants to make it in the hereafter safe and sound on this journey that we're on right now, we're passing through this life. So the one who wants to be saved and the one that wants to receive mercy on Judgment Day, the one who wants to be in bliss and peace and enjoyment in the grave, then he needs the knowledge of Ahlul Sunnah, and he needs to implement it with sincerity. That is the way. So every single person is responsible for themselves, meaning that once the person is accountable, he is going to be judged for each decision. So if he made the right decision, meaning he made the choice that is in compliance with the revealed law, in compliance with what Allah revealed to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the rules, the obligations, the prohibitions, the one who adheres to that, then that one, he has a guarantee from Allah that he will be safe in the hereafter. He will not know fear. He will not have any fear. لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. لا خوف عليهم أي في الآخرة من العقاب والعذاب. لا يخافون الأتقياء، لا يخافون في الآخرة من العذاب أو العقاب، ولا يخافون من أهوال الآخرة ويوم القيامة مما يحصل حولهم في ذلك اليوم. لا يخافون بل هم فرحون. So this part of the ayah, لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون, there's many verses in the Quran that contain that wording. It means that the pious people, the pious Muslims, they will have no fear in the hereafter. And the pious Muslim, from the moment that he sees the angel of death giving him the good news, saying to him, Assalamu alayka ya wali Allah, abshir bi rahmatillahi wa ridah. When he sees the angel of death saying that to him, that pious Muslim, and he's filled with an indescribable feeling of happiness. He's filled with an indescribable feeling of bliss and ecstasy and joy and euphoria that we cannot describe. And that would be his situation until forever. So they will know no fear. وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ أي لا يحزنون على ما تركوا في الدنيا من أهل ومال. And وَلَا يحزنون, it means, and those pious Muslims, they will not be saddened. They will not feel sadness about what they are leaving behind in the dunya. Allahu Akbar. So think about uh, how you love and care about your family and your spouse and your children and your parents and your possessions and your house and your car and your clothes and all the someone might say the fun aspects of your life, like what you like to do and your hobbies. All of that, what's going to happen to it when you are dying? It is going to be left behind. It's going to stay here in this world while you go on to the hereafter, which is the permanent place. Allahu Akbar. So this is the mentality of the Muslim that the Muslim should have. We're grateful to Allah that we are categorized in that category of having access to the Islamic knowledge so that we can achieve that goal for ourselves, so that we can be among those Muslims that are included in the ayah, لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. Because we don't want to fear in the hereafter, and we don't want to feel sad about what we leave behind in this world. And coming up today is day 1 of the month of Rajab, and it is the 7th lunar month. And then after it is Sha'ban, which is the 8th, and then after it is Ramadan. Alhamdulillah. So Ramadan, it is the best month of the lunar year. So Allah Ta'ala specified certain months with certain levels, with certain status, with a certain honor, with a certain virtue. And the best month out of all the lunar months is Ramadan. And the lunar months are 12. And just like there are 12 months in the solar calendar, January through December, there's 12 months in the lunar calendar, starting with Muharram, ending with Dhul Hijjah. So there's 12 months. Now, the difference between the solar months and the lunar months is that the solar months, they do not follow, they're not based on the sighting of anything. They're not based on seeing the moon, for example, at the end of the month. No, uh, they play around with the numbers sometimes, but usually it's a set number of days for each month. So regardless of what time of the year it is, January is going to be a certain amount of days. February is going to be a certain amount of days, etc. But in the lunar month, the way that we know that the new month starts or that the month ends is by sighting the crescent. Because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told us that each lunar month is either 29 days or 30 days. It will not be more or less than that. It will not be less than 29 days, and it will not be more than 30 days. So the maximum that a lunar month could be is 30 days. And so, how do we know when it's the new month? Very simple, very easy. It's by sighting the crescent. So on day 29 of the lunar month, we wait until the sun sets. So after the sun sets on the 29th day of the lunar month, we go and we check the western horizon when the sun sets for up to 30 minutes. And if we see the crescent, then we know that the next day is going to be day 1 of the lunar calendar. Day 1 of the lunar calendar. And that is how we tell the time, or for the lunar months, that's how we tell the dates. So it's ongoing. It's an ongoing thing where we have to, as a nation, we have to check. It's a communal obligation upon us to check. So that's what we do. So Allah Ta'ala, He made something special for us, the nation of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because we are the best of nations and we're the final nation. Allah Ta'ala, He gave a specialty to the nation of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is that Allah Ta'ala made the obligation of the fasting that has been made an obligation for the previous nations also. So, for example, in the nation of Prophet Jesus alayhi salam, the Muslims had to fast, but it wasn't the month of Ramadan. They had to fast a month that wasn't Ramadan, but they still had to fast a month. And for the nation of Prophet Musa alayhi salam, they also had to fast, but it wasn't the month of Ramadan. For the nation of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, it was chosen for us. It was given to us that the month that we would fast in is the month of Ramadan. The month that we would have the obligatory fasting for us would be the month of Ramadan. So this is a honor. This is an honor for the Muslim nation that we fast the month of Ramadan. And the way that we know, like we said, is by citing the crescent. So it would be invalid to claim ahead of time that Ramadan is going to be on a start on such and such a day. This is invalid Islamically because there really is no way for the person to do that because the beginning of Ramadan is based on sighting the crescent. It's not based on anything else. So if we don't see the crescent on the 29th day, what happens? What do? We wait one more day. And so the next day after the 29th would be the 30th. And then we know that the day after that would be the first of Ramadan. So that's the only way, that's the only method that we go by. We don't go by any other method. We don't go by any other way. We don't go by calculations. We don't go by satellites. We don't go by things that are of the astronauts or the NASA or anything like that. We go by what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what he taught us. And the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he obviously Allah Ta'ala, for example, Allah Ta'ala knew that there would be a time where we live in this world and there is satellites and there's so-called astronauts and there's all this uh, so-called technology that they use. But still, the religious judgment or the rule that was given, the way for us to determine the beginning of fasting is by citing the crescent. It is not by calculations. It is not by uh, satellites. It is not by so-called spaceships. It is not by telescopes. It is not by uh, supposed astronauts. It is by whatever the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was revealed to him and what Allah Ta'ala uh, made obligatory upon us. So, Alhamdulillah, that as Muslims living in this time, we are followers of the law of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the law that was revealed to him, and we don't change. We don't replace it. We don't substitute it. We don't leave it out for something else. Rather, we go by what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, and that's it. And whoever decides to follow something else, then that person obviously has gone off the mark. This person has decided to follow something else, which is not the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so, of course, whoever follows something other than the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's gonna go astray. He's gonna be misguided. He's not going to be on the straight path. He's not going to be on as-siratul mustaqim, and which is what we ask Allah. As-siratul mustaqim, yani Islam. So we ask Allah every single day in Al-Fatiha to keep us steadfast on the straight path. So that means we got to stay following Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the author said, fasting in the month of Ramadan is obligatory upon every accountable Muslim. It is not valid for the woman in the state of menstruation or postpartum bleeding to fast. However, she must make up the days she missed. So the one who's obligated to fast is the accountable Muslim, yani, of course, if he's able. And the woman who's on her period, or the woman who is bleeding after birth, yani the postpartum bleeding, she won't be in a situation where she's able to fast. So religiously, she cannot fast, even if she wanted to, even if she did everything that the fasting Muslim does. Their fast would not be counted, and they would be charged with a sin. Yani they get a sin for doing that because it's an invalid act of worship. So, but the difference between the fasting and the prayer is that the woman, in the case of fasting, she doesn't have to make. In the case of fasting, she has to make it up. In the case of fasting, the woman, after she finishes her period and after Ramadan is over and after Shawwal, the first of Shawwal, after the Eid, yani, then she makes up the fast. Then she has up until the next Ramadan to make up whatever days that she missed of Ramadan due to her period. And if she delays it beyond that, she delays it beyond her beyond the next Ramadan, she would be sinful. And there's something that she has to pay in expiation. It is permissible for the traveler of a distance which permits shortening the prayer to not fast, even if fasting is not difficult for one. So, as you know, Islamically, there is of at the borders of a town, then you cross the distance and outside the borders of the town, and you're like in an area that's not residential. It's like countryside or wilderness or a desert or open area, or a place that doesn't have residences on either side of the road. So it would be basically like a commercial area, etc. Or like nowadays, for example, you have a highway and there's like trees and stuff on the right side, on the left side, or flatlands, etc. But there's no houses or places to live on either side of the road. So you cross a distance of approximately 27 American miles, which is the minimum amount. And according to, there's different sayings about the distance, but the shortest uh, distance out of those sayings is 27 American miles. So if you travel in this way, a distance of 27 American miles or more, and you know that you're going to cross that distance before you head out, then this is called a shortening distance, meaning a distance in which you can shorten shorten the 4 rak'ah prayer. You can shorten it to 2 rak'ahs, and you can, in the Shafi'i school, combine the Dhuhr with the Asr and the Maghrib with the Isha. So this is called a shortening distance travel, or a long travel that allows for shortening of the prayer. So if the Muslim, he is on that type of travel and it happens to be Ramadan, so if he wants, the Muslim, if he wants, while he's in that judgment of traveling, he is permitted to not fast, even if that travel of his is not difficult. So, mashallah, yani, this is one of the proofs for the validity of Islam. Because the scholars a long time ago, they said that if the travel was not difficult, still the Muslim has the option to not fast if he's a traveler and for a day of Ramadan. And he he can do that even if the travel is not easy. Now, if we look at the way that they traveled back then, no matter how you no matter how you picture it, right? For us now, no matter how you picture it, it's either going to be on an animal or walking. Or for example, like an animal but like is pulling a cart or something like that where you're like sitting on it. But still, if imagine now someone like for us now to travel like that, for us we'll consider it difficult, right? Because it's not like traveling in a car, it's not like traveling in an airplane, it's not like traveling in a train, it's not like traveling on a boat, like a cruise or something. But subhanallah, how easy it is, for example, when you're sitting in an air conditioned vehicle. You're just sitting there pushing the gas pedal. You're moving 70 miles per hour, 80 miles per hour. Uh, you're getting to where you're going. Even in that case, even though it's easy, we, if it's Ramadan and we are traveling, then we have the option to break the fast. Yani, it's permissible if we don't fast, so we could eat, we could drink. But then after Ramadan and after the Eid, then we have to make it up. Okay. Now, there's a detail for, like, let's say, when the travel begins. So, if, let's say, during one of the nights of Ramadan, right, you get on a plane, you travel to another country. Okay. So, for sure, you travel the shortening distance. And for sure, you pass, uh, an area where there's no buildings, etc., no residential buildings. So, you're considered a traveler. So, but you traveled at night. So then that means the next day, and from the Fajr of that of the Fajr that comes after that night, you're allowed to eat and drink if you want to, based on using the facility of breaking the fast, because you're traveling. So you can use it because your travel occurred before the Fajr of that. But let's say that it was the day of Ramadan and it was like Dhuhr time, and you got on a plane and you traveled to another country. For that day, for that day where you traveled in, where you started your travel, since you started the travel after Fajr, it's not permissible to break the fast for that day. You have to, it'll be like if you're still a traveler the next day, you can do it for the next day and up until you stop being a traveler. But for that first day, if the travel started after Fajr, then you will not be able to break the fast for that day that you started to travel in. And if you continue to travel for like 2-3 days, then you would be able to break the fast, but not that same day that you started to travel, because it has to be in order for you to break the fast of the day when you started to travel. It has to be before the Fajr. You have to start to travel before the Fajr. The sick person, the pregnant woman, and nursing woman are not obligated to fast if it causes them severe difficulty, but they are obligated to make up these mistakes. So the person who's sick, right, he has a sickness that if he fasts while having that sickness, he gets worse, and his sickness gets worse, or his sickness gets longer, or he dies. If he fasts with that sickness that he has, he dies. So in that case, he's permitted, obviously, to not fast. And if it's the type of sickness that eventually goes away, it eventually gets cured, and it's a temporary sickness, then in that case, after he's done being sick, and then after Ramadan is over and after the Eid, he has to make up that day that he didn't fast because he was sick, and he has until the next Ramadan because he missed it with an excuse. Same thing for the pregnant woman. Same thing for the nursing woman. The pregnant woman, she feels like if she fasts, uh, she's gonna get harmed physically, or she feels that she's afraid that if she fasts, something's gonna happen to the baby. Then she is allowed to not fast, and then after Ramadan is over and after the Eid, she has to make it up, and she has until the next Ramadan to do it. Same thing for the nursing woman. Um, so now we're going to mention how to fast. So the integrals of fasting, as the scholars have outlined, as they have mentioned, they basically break it down into two. So they basically say that there's two things that you have to do in order for the fast to be valid. So the first thing they mention is tabyitun niyyah, which is an Arabic term referring to making the intention for the fasting between the Maghrib and the Fajr of the night before the day of fasting. So let's say that I want to fast tomorrow, right? Well, when do I make the intention? Tonight after Maghrib, once Maghrib is in, then I make the intention to fast tomorrow. For example, yani, for the sake of Allah. Because it's not Ramadan, it's a Sunnah fast. So if I were to fast tomorrow, it'll be a Sunnah fast. So if I, after Maghrib, sometime after Maghrib, I have that intention in my heart, then once Fajr is in, and then I do the second integral, which is to avoid the invalidators, then I would be considered fasting. Because the definition of fasting itself is to abstain. It's an abstention. It's a stopping yourself from doing certain things, from consuming certain things, from any certain matters, which we're going to mention each one specifically. So the first is have the intention at night and to specify what one is fasting in their intention. So they're going to fast a day of Ramadan, they have to specify that it's an obligatory fasting of Ramadan. And this must be repeated every day. So, so let's say tomorrow I fast, right? And then I want to fast Monday too. So at Sunday after Maghrib, once Maghrib is in, then at that point I have to have the intention to fast for Monday. And if I want to fast on Tuesday, after Monday, after Maghrib on Monday, what do I do? I have to have the intention to fast on Tuesday, etc. So for each day that I'm fasting, I have to have the intention. I have to intend that I'm going to fast the next day. And according to Imam Shafi'i, like for Ramadan, for example, it would not be valid to intend on the first night of Ramadan to fast the entire month. In the Shafi'i school, this is not uh, this is not valid. For each day of fasting, the person has to intend, and the reason for that, what Al Imam Shafi'i he says, the reason for that is because each of those days is an independent act of worship. Just like when you are praying Dhuhr, and then you're praying Asr, and then you're praying Maghrib, each one is an individual prayer. So you have to have an intention for each one. And for fasting, it's the same because that day that you're fasting is different than the other day, and so you are doing independent acts of worship. So you have to have an intention for each one. So then the second integral is to avoid the invalidators. So what does that mean? To abstain from certain matters. To abstain from sexual intercourse. So both the male and the female have to abstain from sexual intercourse while they're fasting, because if they do it while fasting, then it would break the fast. Then also to abstain from masturbation, that is, inducing ejaculation by the likes of one's own hand, by the likes of one's own hand. So, if the person, and he makes his mani come out, whether it was through his hand or through rubbing or through any other way, any other than sexual intercourse, then by his mani coming out, he breaks his fast. Inducing vomiting. So if the person makes themselves throw up, like if they put their finger in their throat and uh, if they put their finger in their throat and they make themselves throw up, this would be break their fast. This would break their fast, even if they didn't swallow any throw up, and even if they, for example, made sure that nothing returned to the inside of their body cavity, just by making themselves throw up, that breaks the fast. Now, the person they throw up not by their will, because it's obviously something that when it happens naturally, uh, when you don't induce the vomiting, it's something that you can't control. You can try to hold it in, but it's coming out. So in that case, when the person is overwhelmed with the vomit, if they did not induce themselves the vomiting, if they, for example, were nauseous and then like they just vomited. So in this case, what happens in this case? The fast is not invalidated just by them vomiting. So if they vomited, not from their own doing, like they didn't do it themselves, they were sick and they felt nauseous and they threw up, not under their control. Then what happens if they were able to make sure that they do not get any of the vomit inside of their body? Uh, so they were able to make sure that none of the vomit went back inside, and they were able to spit it out, and they were able to purify their saliva so it doesn't have any more traces or remnants of the vomit. Then in that case, their fasting is still valid. So if they were able to, whatever they were able to keep out, if something went back in without their will and without their ability, then of course they're not judged for that. Their fasting would still be valid. Subhanallah. Uh, then is apostasy. Wal'iyadu billah. So if a person while fasting, they commit kufr, na'udhu billah, then that person, they break their fast and they have to abstain from the same things that the fasting person abstains from. And they have to embrace al-Islam, come back to al-Islam, and they have to act like a fasting person until Maghrib, yani for Ramadan, and then they have to make it up immediately after Ramadan is over and after the Eid is over. So in the cases where the person he breaks their fast with any of these things without an excuse, he has to still act like he's fasting for the rest of the day, and he can't just eat and drink freely now. He can't just say, "Oh, I broke my fast. Now I can eat and drink." No, he has to. If he does do that every time that he eats and drinks, he gets more sins. But if he, abstains, etc., and he repents, that's it. And he just missed that day, and he has to make up that fast immediately after Ramadan is over and after the Eid is over. He can't like delay it until the next until sometime before the next Ramadan. Immediately on the 2nd of Shawwal, he has to start making it up. Then there's introducing any substance into a body cavity except one's pure and unmixed saliva from inside one's mouth. So, like into the through an open inlet, like the anus, like the vaginal opening for the woman, like the urethra for both males and females, to insert anything that has a size into those holes through the nostrils, for example, inside to inside of the head. This would break the fast. So if the person, let's say, snorts something up their nose while they're fasting, they break their fast. If the person puts something inside of their rectum, like uh, like an enema or some sort of medicine, etc., they will break their fast. Even if the person, let's say, puts their fingertip inside of their rectum, like if they're making a stinjat and their finger goes into their rectum, this would break their fast. So, be extra careful and make sure not to insert anything into the. As for the ears, there's a difference of opinion. Some scholars said that the ears are an open inlet, and some said that they're not. So you can go by either. And for the eyes are not an open inlet. So if you put in eye drops and then you feel the traces of those like in the back of the throat, it does not break the fast. For the validity of the person's fast, one must come insane for a movement for the entire day. So when the person is, and in order for the fast of the person to be valid, he has to not lose consciousness for the entire day. So he can't lose consciousness for the entire day. Like, for example, if he fainted, um, let's say he fainted at night, right? He prayed Isha and then he fainted. And then he stayed fainted until after Maghrib of the next day. So his fasting won't be valid. So let's say he had made the intention. Let's say before he started praying Isha, he already made the intention and he's going to fast the next day after he prayed Isha. He felt a little lightheaded and then boom, he fainted. And let's say he stayed in a coma until the next day after Maghrib. His fasting is not counted for him. Of course, he's not blameworthy for that. He just has to make it up after Ramadan is over, after the Eid is over, and before the next Ramadan, because it wasn't his fault. Um, as for becoming insane, if the person becomes insane, even for a moment during the day of Ramadan, his fast gets broken. Now, if the person sleeps for the whole day of Ramadan, so before he went to sleep, he made the intention that he's going to fast the next day. He stayed up until, let's say, half an hour before uh, Fajr is in. He was super tired. And let's say that they stayed up all night praying and saying zikr and memorizing Quran and doing worships to Allah and supplicating to Allah and crying to Allah. So, and then half an hour before Fajr, he, like from exhaustion, he just fell asleep. And he stayed asleep all the way up until he heard the adhan for Maghrib of the next day. So in this case, what happens? His fasting is valid, and he would have missed out on the reward that he could have done during Ramadan. But still, uh, he has the it's counted for him that he fasted because he was sleeping, and he had the intention before he went to sleep. In days, It is also invalid to fast the second half of the month of Sha'ban and the day of doubt, unless one joins the fasting of these days to the days before it, or is making up a fast, or fast because of a vow or a habitual exhorted practice with invalid Eid al-Fitr وعيد al-Adha, and the 3 days of Tashriq after Eid al-Adha, which is the 11th, 12th, and 13th of Dhul Hijjah, then it would be invalid to fast those days. And also, it would be invalid to fast the last half of Sha'ban. So after the 15th, if you did not fast the 15th of Sha'ban, then to fast any day after that up until the beginning of Ramadan, if it wasn't for to make up a fast, if it wasn't for a nadhr, a vow, if it wasn't for a habitual sunnah that they do like throughout the year, like every year, like they fast every Monday and Thursday. They what do they do? This is sunnah to do because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he encouraged his nation to fast every Monday and Thursday. So the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam himself, he used to fast every Monday and Thursday. And so it is sunnah for us as well to do that. So the person, that's what they do throughout the year. And so they continue that habit, that wirid, that habitual sunnah practice that they do during the last half of Sha'ban, they can do that. And then there's also the day of doubt. What is the day of doubt? The day of doubt is when there is a specific type of 30th of Sha'ban, which is when the crescent has not been confirmed that somebody saw it, but there are people that are talking about it, that claiming it was confirmed, but there are people who their testimony is not accepted by the Muslim judge. So those people, if they say, "Oh, it was the crescent was sighted," and so some people are like confused and saying, "No, it could be today's the first of Ramadan," and other people are saying, "No, today's the 30th of Sha'ban." If that happens, that which is that type of confusion, if that happens, then this is called the day of doubt. So it's haram and invalid to fast that day because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam he forbade it. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told us not to do it. He told us not to fast that day. So alhamdulillah that we have been guided to what is correct. Now, what happens if someone invalidates a day of fasting in Ramadan by having sexual intercourse while having no dispensation permitting him not to fast when it's sinful? So, if someone breaks their fast through sexual intercourse without an excuse and without a religious permission, like let's say if he was a traveler, or let's say he was sick, so he's not fasting, um, if somebody breaks their fast with sexual intercourse and they don't have an excuse religiously, then they're sinful. They commit an enormous sin. Na'udhu billah. And in addition, one is obligated to make up the missed day immediately, and expiation of lihar is due. The expiation is to free a slave. If unable, then to fast 2 consecutive months. If unable, then to feed 60 poor people. That is, to give each person a mud of whichever is the most common staple crop in the area. So this is the expiation of lihar. So if someone breaks their fast like that with sexual intercourse, then they commit a sin and they have to make it up immediately. Yani after Ramadan is over, after the Eid is over, but like yani on the 2nd of Shawwal, and they have to pay. If they have a Muslim slave, they pay it. They set him free. If they don't, then and they know where to buy one, then they buy one and then they set him free. If they don't have a way to get a slave, then what do? They pay, or I'm sorry, they fast 2 consecutive lunar months. So they have to fast for 2 consecutive lunar months, 2 lunar months in a row. And if they miss any day for any reason, they have to start all over again, even if it was with an excuse. And if they're not unable to fast those 2 consecutive lunar months because of, let's say, they have a terminal illness that they're never going to be cured from, that they cannot fast, then in that case they pay 60 poor people 1 mud each of the common staple crop of that area. So that is the judgment that they have to pay for that. Now, one last note about the invalidators is they invalidate when there's three conditions, meaning that they know it's forbidden, that they did it on purpose, yani voluntarily, and willingly, and they did it uh, yani with their will, and they weren't forced. So let's say like how it happens to the Muslims in China, subhanallah, Allahu Akbar, the oppression that the Muslims are going through in the world. In China, what do they do to the Uyghur Muslims? They hold them down and they pour khamr down their throats. They pour alcohol down their throats. They shove pork in their mouth and make them swallow it. They make the women show their legs. They make the men shave their beards. They make they don't let the men wear qalensuas or turbans. So if they force you, let's say, like at gunpoint, or they physically shove it in your mouth, then it doesn't break the fast. It doesn't break the fast, subhanallah. So for any of those invalidators that we mentioned, if they didn't know it was forbidden, it wouldn't break their fast. If they did it while forgetting that they're fasting, it wouldn't break their fast. If they did it while being forced, then they wouldn't break their fast. And Allah Ta'ala knows best. So the first question is, this is both people or just a man? Yani for breaking the fast with sexual intercourse, the expiation is to be paid only by the man, because the man is the one that would have broken his fast through sexual intercourse. The woman, her judgment is that her fast is broken because she inserted something that has a size into her body cavity through an open inlet. So she doesn't have to pay the expiation. Uh, and the expiation that one has to pay if yeah, okay, so yeah, so I guess you were just reiterating. So yeah, if someone breaks their fast with sexual intercourse during the day of Ramadan without an excuse, they have to pay the expiation. Yani the man has to pay it. Are there any other questions? Oh, what is this? Okay, alhamdulillah, there's a link tree. Yeah, so just for the benefit, there's information, there's knowledge, there's advices, there's motivation, goodness, positivity, um, strength for the Muslim nation. So, any benefit from it for the sake of Allah, get reward, and make dua for us. So, if there are no other questions, we'll conclude. طيب نهلل لا إله إلا الله اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم ربي اغفر لي وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات وبارك الله فيكم السلام عليكم